should have done this maybe 15 years ago. So we want to begin that process of construction of a new airport under a framework that is going to bring public sector, private sector concessionaires. And I am hoping that we can begin that before June this year. So again, that whole infrastructure development is one thing that we are focused on achieving. And I'm saying this because we will require partners. We will require private sector partners. We will require some of your investment arms of your nations, whether at the airport, on the railway, on some of the toll roads that we are doing, the expressway that we are planning to Thika and other areas. So there is opportunity for us to work with you. There are opportunities for us to strengthen our partnerships, both at the public to public level, but also public to private. And I will be looking forward to working with yourselves so that we can do this together. And then number 3 is, as you know, Kenya is an agricultural country. We are almost exhausting the land that we can farm under rain-fed agriculture, and therefore it is absolutely necessary for us to now venture into more of water harvesting, water storage, irrigation technology. That is the space we want to go into. So there is also opportunity for us to work with partners, both in public and private, to do some of the mega dams that we are focused on doing. I know there is a lot of discussion together with our public-private partnership unit at the Treasury and all the other partners and friends. So we are focused on doing another 50 mega dams, maybe 200 medium-level dams and 1,000 or so micro dams. So again, there will be opportunity for us. And also irrigation technology is something that we will be focused on. And I know many of your countries, I have visited some of them, have irrigation technology that we can share and learn from one another and create partnerships that can help us achieve our intentions and contribute not just to food security in Kenya, but also through exports contribute to food security elsewhere. We will be in Parliament this week as part of developing the necessary infrastructure for us to undertake this heavy transformation. We are setting up a National Infrastructure Fund. I have had discussions with the IFC. I have had discussions with the World Bank. I have had discussions with the Africa Development Bank. We've had conversations with the Afri-Exim Bank and many other partners. And they have given us a lot of support in terms of ideas, in terms of how we can use the public resources that we have, the public assets that we have, in a much more structured manner, in a manner that we can use the resources and assets that we have to crowd in resources from the private sector and from other sources to be able to drive our development. We've also learned the hard way that the Constitution mandates us that we must be intentional on making sure that there is intergenerational equity. That we don't, whatever we have today, we need to think about not just today, but we need to think about tomorrow and the generations that will come after us. I was in Kwale, for example, this week actually, on Friday. And when I met the leadership in Kwale, they told me, look, Mr. President, we had titanium in Kwale. We exploited titanium. It got finished. The mine is now closed. And there is no sign of that titanium anywhere today. Some generations in the future will ask us, there was titanium in Kenya, what happened? You people ate the whole of it and left nothing for us. So we're going to Parliament to actualize a new legislation, the Sovereign Wealth Fund, that will now provide mechanisms for making sure that whatever it is that we do now, whether through privatization or any other resources, we have a fund that takes care of the generations that will come after us. Again, we have areas that we will learn from some of you. We will work together so that the Sovereign Wealth Fund will secure intergenerational equity and enhance resilience to external shocks through disciplined, transparent, and long-term stewardship of national resources. Excellencies, in 2025, Kenya continued to deepen bilateral relations across Europe, the Middle East, Africa, Asia, and the Americas. These engagements strengthened cooperation in trade, investment, security, migration, climate action, education, and technology, while expanding people-to-people exchanges. I am very happy that in the last 3 years we have been able to conclude, sign, ratify the Economic Partnership Agreement with Europe. It was quite a very proud moment to sign that contract here. We have also concluded the CEPA agreement with UAE. We have also almost concluded now the agreement with China. And my Minister for Trade will be leaving the day after tomorrow to conclude the negotiation, the bilateral trade agreement with the United States. And we are aligning more so that we can build a stronger ecosystem of trade partnerships that will allow us to do more with many friends across the globe. We look forward to further widening and deepening diplomatic engagement in 2026 as we advance bilateral cooperation frameworks globally, promote peace and security, strengthen trade and investment ties, expand scientific, technological, and cultural exchanges, foster regional integration, facilitate labor mobility, and harness collective efforts towards shared continental and multilateral aspirations. The principles of Pan-Africanism, good neighborliness, and regionalism continues to shape our diplomacy. Kenya currently serves as the chair of the East African Community and will chair the Common Markets for Eastern and Southern Africa Authority later this year. These responsibilities align with Kenya's long-term standing view that enhanced regional cooperation remains central to Africa's economic transformation and sustainable development in general. At the continental level, Kenya continues to contribute to Africa's institutional strengthening. As African Union champion for institutional reform, we have supported ongoing efforts to enhance the effectiveness, the credibility, and responsiveness of the Union, particularly in the areas of peace, governance, and financing. Again, let me appreciate the support to the African Union by many partners here. And to support what you have done over the years, we are having a very candid conversation as African leaders, and I will be presenting a report on what we have managed to put together. Number one, to do more on funding the Africa Union. We have developed alternative mechanisms of trying to make sure that we fund the African Union 100% by ourselves, so that whatever partnership exists will be additional to what we are doing as leaders and as countries in this continent. Number two, we are looking at the peace and security infrastructure. The peace fund we have at the AU require re-engineering. We have made proposals, and we will ask for support from friends and partners so that African peace interventions, as was passed by the UN resolution, I think 2279 or thereabout, that says that Africa Union or African peace security interventions will be funded by assessed contributions of the UN, so that we can be able to take charge of the hotspots in our region. But aside from that, we are also looking at what we can do on the African standby force to be able to manage the security challenges in our region more. I will be making this presentation to my colleagues this weekend. We are also looking at making the Africa Union much more accountable. Today, there is a disconnect between the Pan-African Parliament and the executive institution of the Africa Union. We want to see how budgets can be approved, improve the efficacy of the Pan-African Parliament, and we've made concrete proposals on that, how that can be done. And then finally, we want to create much more accountability by finally bringing into force the African Court of Justice. Today, if there are disputes between institutions of the AU, there is no mechanism of adjudicating. Today, if there are disputes between countries, there is no mechanism of adjudication. Thankfully, the instruments for the establishment of the African Court of Justice have already been ratified. They have already been signed. What is only remaining is the actualization. So again, we will be making those proposals. In addition, as chair of the Committee of African Heads of State on Climate Change, Kenya has advanced the coordinated African position on climate action, climate finance, and adaptation, ensuring that Africa's priorities are clearly articulated and pursued in unity with global processes. Kenya also looks forward to hosting the Africa France Summit in May this year, which will showcase Africa's innovative capacity and demonstrate the strength of cross-continental partnerships. It will be the first time that an Anglophone country will be hosting a French Africa. Opportunity for us to finally reduce the sharp edges between Francophone and Anglophone and try and consolidate our partnerships as one region. There will be private sector engagement. We're trying to get the highest level of participation from African entrepreneurs, business people, and investors, and to see how we can consolidate that position. I have talked to colleagues around the continent, and we are making very good progress on colleagues that will be attending. We will also host the 4th EAC COMESA SADC Tripartite Summit this year, which is expected to significantly advance the regional integration agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, regional peace and security remains a core focus of Kenya's foreign policy. Stability in the Horn of Africa and the Great Lakes region is inseparable from our own national security, economic prospects, and development trajectory. Kenya, therefore, remains actively engaged in regional and continental efforts to prevent conflict escalation, strengthen governance, and build resilience in fragile and conflict-affected areas. In the Great Lakes region, Kenya has played an active role in efforts to reduce tensions and advance dialogue among parties in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Together with His Excellency Emerson Mnangagwa, President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, I co-chaired several EAC SADC summits, which culminated in the merger of the Nairobi and Luanda processes, strengthening coherence and reaffirming regional ownership of this peace framework. In December last year, I also witnessed the signing of the Washington Accord for Peace and Prosperity between the governments of the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda, marking an important diplomatic milestone. Kenya maintains that international initiatives, including the Washington and Doha processes, must reinforce and remain aligned with a consolidated African-led framework to support sustainable outcomes. In Sudan, Kenya remains deeply concerned by the ongoing conflict and its grave humanitarian consequences. There cannot be any military solution, in my very honest opinion, to that conflict. An inclusive process, a civilian-led intervention that brings parties on board, in my opinion, is the only viable path forward. I have had a candid conversation with friends across the continent, with friends across the globe. I have brought up this issue with President Trump. I have brought up this issue with President Macron. I have brought up this issue with the new Chancellor of Germany. My minister here has been to the UK. We have had many engagements. It is still my and Kenya's concern that the situation in Sudan is grave. It is very serious. And global attention must be focused in Sudan, because what is going on in Sudan is completely inhuman. And the international community must do whatever it takes to make sure that we take charge of that situation. Kenya, we will play our role. We have offered a place for dialogue here in Nairobi. We have offered corridors of humanitarian support where it is needed. We have serviced Sudan in the past from Lokichogio Airport here in Turkana. I have made all that available to the international community, and we will play our part in making sure that we deal with the situation in Sudan. In South Sudan, Kenya reiterates its call to all parties to fully honor their commitments under the revitalized peace agreement. I did speak last evening with President Salva Kiir, and hopefully we will be able to have a meeting later this week or early next week, because the Tumaini initiative that was, in my opinion, a viable pathway towards resolving the issue in South Sudan was sabotaged by political interests. Sudan has finally come back to say maybe we should relook at it again, and I am very open to working with South Sudan in making sure that Kenya supports the peace efforts in that sister country, and we look forward to working with the Troika and all the other partners that are involved in South Sudan. I know there is a feeling by colleagues and partners that everybody is concerned about South Sudan, except you know who. In Somalia, Kenya continues to encourage constructive dialogue between the federal government and the federal member states as the foundation for national cohesion and effective governance. We underscore the importance of predictable financing and a conditions-based transition in the Africa Union support and stabilization mission to safeguard hard-won gains that may go to waste if we do not manage the transition properly. Beyond our immediate region, Kenya continues to contribute responsibly to global peace and security. As lead nation in the multinational security support mission in Haiti, we stand in solidarity with the Haitian people and their quest for the restoration of security, order, and the rule of law. We are now focused on a coordinated and orderly transition of that mission to the gang suppression force, supported by adequate international financing, strengthened command structures, and a United Nations support office, measures essential to consolidate progress and prevent relapse into instability. A lot has been achieved, not as much as we would have wanted, but there is progress that had been achieved that needs to be safeguarded, and then whatever needs to be done should be done. In 2025, ladies and gentlemen, Kenya played an active and constructive role in global efforts to reform development financing, strengthen peace operations, and advance sustainable development in a manner that is inclusive, equitable, and responsive to contemporary realities. At the 4th International Conference on Financing for Development, held in Seville in Spain, Kenya joined the international community in renewing and reviewing progress under the Addis Ababa Action Agenda while confronting emerging global financing constraints. Our engagement underscored the urgent need to reform the global financing architecture to better support domestic resource mobilization, sustainable debt management, and the mobilization of private capital for development. At the same time, Kenya's commitment to global environmental governance was demonstrated during the 7th session of the United Nations Environmental Assembly, held here in Nairobi, where Kenya called for the translation of global declarations, including the outcomes of COP30, into concrete action addressing climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution in ways that are visible in people's lives and protective of future generations. Our leadership in environmental diplomacy also extends to ocean governance. The ratification of the agreement on the conservation and sustainable use of marine biological diversity of areas beyond national jurisdiction reaffirms our commitment to rules-based multilateralism, ocean sustainability, and the protection of global commons. In June 2026, Kenya will host the 11th Our Oceans Conference under the theme, Our Ocean, Our Heritage, Our Future. This gathering will mobilize global commitment on marine conservation, sustainable fisheries, and climate resilience while showcasing Africa's contribution to ocean action and the blue economy. Kenya's multilateral engagement also encompasses social development. At the World Summit for Social Development held in Doha, Qatar, we reaffirm that poverty eradication, decent work, and social inclusion are inseparable from sustainable development. These principles continue to guide both our domestic policy and our international partnerships. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Kenya remains a firm proponent of a rules-based international order. Amid growing global instability, we reaffirm our commitment to sovereignty and territorial integrity as enshrined in the Charter of the United Nations. As the UN marks its 80th anniversary, the world stands at a critical inflection point with multilateralism under increasing strain. It is our firm belief that a strong United Nations and a steadfast adherence to multilateral principles remains indispensable in addressing the complex and interconnected challenges of our time. We are proud to host the only United Nations headquarters in the Global South and remain committed to providing the political, security, and infrastructural support necessary to expand the UN presence in Kenya. Bangura knows that. She used to send me very long messages. We have this problem, you need to sort out. Now the messages are becoming shorter, but they are still coming. We recognize the United Nations remains one of humanity's greatest collective achievements. Yet persistent funding shortfalls and administrative constraints continue to limit its efficacy and responsiveness. Kenya therefore supports renewed efforts to strengthen and adequately resource the UN system. The defunding of UN agencies weakens multilateral cooperation and diminishes the international community's capacity to respond to conflict, humanitarian crisis, global health threats, and development challenges. At the same time, Africa also marks 2 decades since the Ezulwini Consensus and the Sirte Declaration, through which the continent has spoken in one voice in calling for just and equitable reform of the UN Security Council. Africa's continued exclusion, despite bearing significant share of Security Council's agenda and peacekeeping responsibilities, undermines the legitimacy and effectiveness of the United Nations. Comprehensive reform, including permanent African representation, is essential to the institution's relevance in the 21st century. Excellencies, as I conclude, I commend the diplomatic corps and international organizations represented here for your continued cooperation, your goodwill, and your partnership with Kenya. We truly appreciate, and we don't take it for granted. As we progress in 2026, let us deepen collaboration and ensure that our shared efforts translate into measurable and meaningful outcomes for our peoples and for humanity. Thank you very much for your attention, and as I have always said, I look forward to working with you. Thank you very much.